Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel. Welcome to those of you who are new. Welcome back to those of you who are seasoned veterans of what we do around here. What we do around here is bring about conversations of a variety of topics psychological, social, emotional, and all points in between. We have over 630 audios of a variety of topics for your listening pleasure. If you're dealing with depression or other forms of emotional instability, I work with people all the time on resetting how their minds work, and I'd love to be part of your team in your journey to living your life as completely as possible. So there's a couple ways we can do that. You can reach out on Twitter at PO Perception, or you can reach out through this YouTube channel in the About Me section and go to my website. There is information there on contact and all that good stuff. So, in any event, today is kind of the overwhelm of depression, things that it will cause you to experience. So the first is hopelessness. Obviously, hopelessness is a feeling we've all held for from time to time. Easy for me to say, but the reality is when you're hopeless for an extended period of time, that is, you cannot find hope in virtually anything you're going through, there's a sign that your body chemistry may be changing and depression may be a contributing factor, if not an out cause. It's important to begin to look at the root causes of these issues, and especially when you're in the midst of something like that. Also, understand that you may not be thinking fully, clearly, or directly towards the life you actually want. You may actually be continually reacting through the trauma of the experiences you've already had, and that can be extremely difficult, especially if you are struggling and don't know the derivative root cause of said struggle. It's important to get help, and I encourage anyone to work with a team of people, a psychologist, psychiatrist, coach, spiritual leader if you are a spiritual person. Actually, the more you're willing to work with individuals who are of a variety of disciplines, the quicker your recovery plan is able to be activated in fullness, because not one person has all the answers, but a group of people could help you find your specific answers. The next is self-care, whether that's getting up and taking a shower, bathing, getting dressed, changing clothes, getting out of the house, sleeping well, eating well, and all points in between. When depression takes over, self-care becomes a lesser focus. That's because at the end of the day, you really don't care as much about, you know, how the world sees you or even how you see yourself. It becomes overwhelming to do simple things or things that are daily care related, and so the challenge becomes, what does one do when they can't do that? Obviously, reaching out for help from family, friends, community, resources, and the like becomes necessary so that you don't become so isolated that getting back on the horse is difficult. Also, understanding that reintegrating oneself after not taking care of oneself for an extended period of time can be difficult. The loss of interest in the everyday things or the things that used to excite you is another sign that depression may be a cause. Now, this could be something as simple as your favorite television show, your favorite band, music, whatever, or even educational things that used to intrigue you no longer have the same pull. That's because your ability to focus is negatively impacted for an extended period of time, thus creating a feeling that nothing matters, and the apoplectic nature to, how you see the world becomes a contributing factor to the overall stress that you're experiencing. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean this is good or bad. It is neither. It's just a part of the experience, but finding a way to understand how to alter your perception of the experience, make decisions that have a better outcome, and also acknowledge that you may be burned out and need to recharge. One of the things I am a huge advocate for that we don't necessarily fully have in the Western world as of yet is a more integrative process where a person can be removed from the stressors of society for anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, while we kind of remap the brain in a non-clinical environment. So that is finding a way through donors, through civic organizations, churches, religious organizations, or government program, or combination of all of the above, to take a person who really believes they can't cope with the world around them and find a way to reset their neurotic pathways in order to create a pathway to positive change. And unfortunately, we don't currently have within our current medical system or model that approach. I think if we did, we'd cut down on violence and domestic violence and random acts of violence and crime. I think if we did, we'd also cut down on things like public shootings and suicide rates and a whole bunch of other things. But because we don't have that and that's not part of our meta model, we don't have the way to reach that yet. I think that's where integrative recovery is going over the next 20 to 50 years. In any event, the next thing to consider is negative thought and rumination. So, if a person has the tendency towards pessimism, if a person has the tendency towards worry, if a person has the tendency towards looking at the glass half metaphorically half full or actually half empty, and they're always kind of bent towards what we consider the negative to be, it becomes difficult for a number of reasons, not limited to the stress level becomes so harsh and hard that often finding the recovery can become virtually impossible. So finding a way to build a better relationship with neutrality is one of the most important things that a person can do under any circumstance in order to create the reality they truly desire. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be positive, and I personally despise the positive only teachers because it's not possible to realistically, consistently remain positive at all times. And when we try, we end up faking it and actually setting ourselves off. But when we choose to always return to a place of neutrality, it becomes easier to deal with the challenges of daily living. The next thing to look at is the possibility of kind of fearing being alone. Alone is a perception too. It's one that our society, especially during the COVID crisis, has had to confront more than many people were ready to or wanted to, but in reality, we're never alone. Alone is a perception because in reality, if we reach out, even to a stranger on the subway or down the street or walking through our neighborhood, we can often find some degree of commonality because human beings have the same or very similar emotional experiences throughout life. And so what happens is the stranger danger mentality that we're taught as children obviously is useful to protect us from predatory individuals. However, when we carry that into adulthood and we fear connecting with people on a deeper level, that becomes problematic for a number of reasons, not limited to we have to make new connections when the people we expected to be there aren't emotionally present. And so when we're resistant to making new connections and sometimes even forcing ourselves to look at connecting with new people, we actually isolate ourselves unnecessarily and create the perception that we're alone. Realization is that, in fact, depression or the preoccupation with depression will drain a person mentally, emotionally, and physically. So having enough energy to do daily tasks becomes harder and harder the longer a person stays in the depressive state. Being emotionally drained often causes people not to do basic things. Being mentally drained causes issues with concentration. Physical drain can cause physical pain, among other physical symptoms. So drain is an important factor when looking at depression. The second to last thing is mood swings. So generally what happens is what's known as the negative loop. Someone goes from sad to angry, angry to desperate, desperate to frenetic or impulsive. And so what happens oftentimes is that there is no reset away from negative emotion, and the loop becomes at that point automatic or into our autonomic system, to the point where seeing things in a more positive way becomes difficult, if not downright impossible, for people who have been in this loop for a long period of time, several weeks, several months. Then the last thing is preoccupation with death and dying. For people that have dealt with depression for a long period of time, the relief and the finality of death almost feels like a solution that will bring a certain level of relief. And that can obviously be problematic for a number of reasons, not limited to, obviously, long-term solution to what often is a temporary problem, but you can't see that through the middle of the crisis itself. Again, I encourage you, if you're struggling with this stuff, please reach out for assistance. Till next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment.